Welcome, Somnathji. We're just waiting for all your comments and contributions to this. May I invite Mr. Sumit Gupta, CEO, Asia Business, McDonald Pells Global Commodities. Sumitji, so nice to see you again and again and again. A warm welcome to you. Thank you. To join this esteemed panel, may I invite Mr. Leif Carlson. He's online, okay. Now may I invite to join them, Mr. Ajay Goyal, Chairman, Wheat Products Promotion Society, WPPS. A warm welcome, sir. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, General Manager of Rice and Grain Business, Olam Agri India Private Limited. Ashishji. That completes our panel. Manisha ji, over to you. How many minutes do you want? Yeah, there are two speakers online, Manisha ji, and they will come when they are ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure being here, and there's so much to learn about wheat. What we normally keep talking on TV is about demand, supply, and government measures, and we will talk about that, all of that actually in this panel. But it was great hearing about fortification, so much to learn as a consumer as well. So great sense of various sessions that have been organized here. But I'll directly come to the demand, supply, and prices, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. And we all know that it was in 2021 when India banned wheat exports, and since then, actually last 1 year, when I think about it, I have been talking to many people on this panel, off-air and on-air, and we've been talking, trying to make sense on what the Indian production numbers are to begin with. Ajayji, thank you. We've been talking about 105 versus government's number of 112. Is there any consensus? Has that gap narrowed anywhere, or are we still sticking to that?
So I think it is on the lower side, and it's definitely not. So the truth, as they say in English, lies somewhere in
middle,
in between. It's neither the absolute black or the absolute white, but somewhere in between. But I think the larger point is what is the process of this guesstimation or estimation that we have, and the accuracy of that, or how far away is it? Is it like a 5% off or a 10% off year on year? So that is what needs to be debated more, because the type of numbers which keep coming out from the government and even private assessors is really, there's a gap in them, and so that is the missing link actually.
So, I know this is something, Ajayji, that I almost, we've been talking about this for a long time, that industry gets to make representations to the government. There are various stakeholders meeting that take place as well. Have you made that representation to the government on what the industry feels is the wheat supply in India, wheat crop in India?
Yeah, definitely. We hired a private, the Roll of Lamlas Federation of India hired a private surveyor, and we did give in our recommendation. The findings of that survey were about 104, 105 million tons. And, but of course, that was somewhere in the month of February, I guess. And currently the government number is 112 plus something. So again, there's a 7.5 million gap.
And that's a big number.
Yeah, so I think right now the number we are talking about is a gap of hardly 4 or 5 million tons that the market has been demanding, be replenished in some form or the other.
So clearly the government is not budging, nor is the industry, and we are dealing with on either side onto this one. I want to talk about India some more before I go to my international guests here, and this one is to you, Mr. Chatterjee. A lot has happened with the previous government, and as the new government is taken over and wheat continues to be in focus, you being a company and with the way it has been about mandatory disclosing of stocks, stock limits also now coming in, how as you as an industry are perceiving it, dealing with it?
Manisha ji, I don't think you're going to envy my job, because the kind of pressures that we are under, so we on the one side have a little bit of a problem with demand, right? While some green shoots are evident, but it was a bit of an uphill struggle on the demand side. On the inflation side, so just imagine a packet of cookies, Mom's Magic, cashew almond, cashew bhi bad gaya. There's a problem, almond bad gaya. If you like Bourbon, if you like the chocolate chip cookies,
Cocoa
cocoa
is
has gone from $2,500 a ton to touch 12,000. Right now it's at 9. So, I mean, never a dull moment for us. Of course, every Friday wheat की declaration देना पड़ता है, Monday को देना पड़ता है चीनी का, और अब शायद बुधवार को हमें चने का देना पड़ेगा, right? So, हाँ, मतलब सरकार makes sure that we earn our salaries.
I remember Mr. Goel telling me once, I would love to do my business, but I am always, trying to firefight as it is. So I get you guys here. But what are you doing now? I mean, I understand that you're on edge all the time. Price volatility is one part of it. The government reforms and measures and curbs are another part of it. So how does it look from here when you look at supply chains? I know companies like to keep a reassured inventory with them. How are you dealing with these challenges?
So, ma'am, if we go back to your initial question to Goelji, which was on the crop estimate, and everyone in this room has his own estimate. Mine was, for last year, it was 98. And based on my extensive tours into the rural heartlands of UP during season, I think the crop overall in India, with a little bit of deficit in MP, is about 5 million higher than last year. So there you are, my number is 103. Very good. In fact, in parts of Punjab, Haryana, UP, we've had exemplary weather. And the yields and the weight of the wheat is excellent. So despite that, if today we have a issue with availability, then yes, that makes us worried. Also, what worries us is the fact that on 1st April 2025, the government is likely to open with a very, very tight stock position. I mean, any estimate of 7 to 8 million. For a country our size, ma'am, I think this is really sitting on the razor's edge. So, yes, I think it would make sense to, they have put the stock limits. The people who are honest will put the numbers up on the portal. But there is a lot of the wheat which is under the radar, right? So this solution really, and as the Roller Flour Millers Association have been suggesting, lies in importing a little bit into the southern ports of India. That will take the edge off the price inflation on wheat. The millers in south will be able to get some of the wheat in. Fortunately, the international markets are also, if not benign, they were lower, they've increased, but they're still okay. However, this import should have to be allowed at zero duty, because anything more than that will not give parity.
I want to come back to your statement where you said a lot of wheat is under radar. You want to elaborate on that?
So I was mentioning this anecdote to a few of my friends last evening over a drink. So this is what happened. So we were touring in certain part of UP, and let me not disclose names here. So the person who was taking me around, he said, "Sir, chaliye hum aapko ek na goshala mein leke jate hain." So I said, "Okay, goshala, but ek aur mandi chalte hain yaar, goshala nahi jana mujhe, doodh kharidne nahi aaya hu." So he says, "Nahi, aap chalo." So we went there, and very nice, impressive goshala with 650 cows. But the point is, why was I there? And I kept asking him. And then finally, I was told that, well, this gentleman, he is storing 150,000 tons of wheat for feed under the name of the farmers. Now, these people are not on the radar. So there is that wheat, and when will that wheat actually come into the market? That will only come if they get a signal from the government that they're really serious. This wheat will not come by putting stock limits. So there you go.
There you are then. And since you mentioned the I word, which is the import word, and we've been talking about this for the last couple of years as well, since we saw exports being banned. Since then, the industry has been talking about this. This perhaps is inevitable. We will see that happen. Hasn't happened yet. We continue to hear statements from agri and food departments that there is enough wheat, and of course, all options are open. How do you read into that, and do you actually see wheat imports coming in this year?
As I said, ma'am, I circle back to my earlier point that, a 7-8 million ton opening stock next year is very, very risky. After an exemplary weather during 2023-24 Rabi, Are we going to be blessed by another great winter? Are we going to have that? Should something go wrong, then we are sitting on a powder keg. That's one. Second, I think I would also request that the government considers favorably our plea, and in fact, not our plea, the plea of our Indian diaspora, which lives abroad. They are really hankering for Indian atta, right? And today, it's been almost 2 years since the ban on Indian wheat products and wheat exports. So I think वो लोग Canadian wheat का आटा खाके या Australian wheat का आटा खाके उनको वो स्वाद नहीं आ रहा है. And so somewhere I think, the government must look at allowing that. It's not a big amount. You bring in enough to ensure India's food security, and you allow a little bit of exports, because they're also our brothers and sisters over there.
All right. Since you mentioned Canada, we do have Mr. Carlson with us. Mr. Carlson, hi. Welcome to Delhi. Online yet. What's your sense now on the Canadian wheat? How do you look at those numbers? And yeah, Mr. Carlson. I just saw him. He was online here. Mr. Carlson, hi.
Yes, I'm
Can
here.
you hear us? All right, perfect. What's your sense? I mean, in India, we seem to be dealing with a lot of numbers here and curbs and restrictions. How are you looking at the global markets to begin with, and especially Canadian numbers?
Well, right now in Canada, the biggest news is the completion of the harvest, the seeding of our spring seeded crops. So in Western Canada, is where most of our wheat production is. Most of it is of hard red spring type, the Canada Western Red Spring, but we also grow other spring wheats and a significant amount of Durham wheat and some soft red winter wheat in Ontario, in the eastern part of the country. In the western part, it's been quite favorable, in particular because of the precipitation that we've got in Canada. Coming out of last year, the growing region, which is all based off of rainfall, there's very little irrigation in Canadian wheat production. The soil moisture was very low coming out of last year, so the precipitation in the Canadian winter and early in the Canadian spring was very important. We've got the precipitation early in the year. At the same time, farmers have been able to get on the fields and plant the crop. And these two things combined, the good moisture and the timely seeding, put Canada in a good spot for bigger production this year than we saw last year.
Mr. Carlson, so what numbers are we looking at? Until now, what you've told us does tell us that we're looking at perhaps good numbers.
For the Canadian wheat production, we'd estimate the total wheat production at just over 34 million metric tons. That would be both for for common wheat and Durham wheat. For common wheat, we'd be estimating at around 28.5 million tons.
Point taken. Mr. Petit, this one is to you, and welcome to this session. While India is looking at various restrictions right now and exports are shut, we could be even looking at imports. So it's really imperative. And until now, while we've been looking at global numbers, but for the last couple of years, we've been very, very interested in sense of availability and the prices in the international markets. What is it that you're looking at in sense of global production, consumption numbers, and your sense on prices going forward?
Thank you very much, first of all, for having IGC in your conference. And I would just to continue at what Leif Carson just said. He said about 34 million tons for Canada. It's plus 8%. If you look on US, from North America, you have a very good prospect on harvest. It has already started in US, so good signals. In other parts of the North Hemisphere, China also it seems to do a good harvest. So we are not expecting having China too much active on the wheat market for this marketing year. But we have also some concerns, particularly in the Black Sea region, where Russian grain sector faced frost in April, and now in south of Russia, very hot weather. And furthermore, for the spring seeding in Siberia, a lot of rain, so which has delayed really the seeding period of time. So for Russia, more or less, we are expecting a fall of 10 million tons or even more of grains production for this harvest. And the second concern is the EU. In the south part of EU, a better harvest than last year because no drought. But in the north of EU and eastern part of EU, a lot of water along the year, so which means lower yield, definitively, but also question of quality. What will be the quality getting out of the field? So all in all, we are looking for a world production stable around the 800 million tons, with also, I should say, it's medium term, but potential good harvest in South Hemisphere. We are looking about the seeding area in Argentina and Australia, which will come more in March. But we see really there a good prospect. So no tension on production, on supply side. And I would like to add, in terms of consumptions, we see that the maize market is really competitive in relation to feed wheat, so for the livestock sector. And we are even expecting a decrease of consumption of wheat globally by -7%. So supply stable, consumption going slightly down, which means we shouldn't have tension on the market. But as I say, shouldn't have, because you have seen recently, still the market price is still very volatile. Maybe because all the operators on the market have not yet a full picture of what could be indeed the situation, the trade situation for 24-25. And in terms of impact on price, I would really look on two aspects in 24-25. First of all, exchange rates. You know that several countries and several central banks will revisit the tightening money policy, which might have disruption in terms of exchange rates, and which mean in international analysis, we talk about dollar per ton. But we know that in local currency, it makes totally different situation, particularly for country in sub-Saharan Africa. And the second factor to look at is disruption and logistics. Because we see the Red Cross crossing, is still under threat, I would say, of potential disruption. In the Black Sea region, it's working. It worked very well in 23-24, but we know it's something unstable. We cannot predict 6 months in advance what would be. So this is why I would say logistics and exchange rates could be a disruption of the potential a potential marketing year, 24-25. Thank you.
So, Mr. Petit, when you say that the production is estimated to be, stagnant, consumption, you were saying, can decline by 7% in the next coming year. If India does come to the market to import, do you see that impacting prices at all?
No, I would say it's not an impact in a global term. The question is from where India will import. And we know that from Indian industry, grain sector industry, like also sub-Saharan Africa, it's an industry which is very sensitive to price. And as I said, in Black Sea region, we are expecting less harvest, less production. That means there will be more competition in that area. And with a few alternatives in terms of same competitiveness, and therefore the price might feel more higher for countries which are used to go to Black Sea region and to be supplied from the Black Sea region. So here might be a mixed analysis, I would say, specifically for India.
Sure. Mr. Carlson, this one is to you. Are you also anticipating a decline in consumption going forward when it comes to wheat?
I mean, globally, I think the numbers that the IGC publishes are good sources. For Canadian wheat, for hard red spring in particular, demand has remained very strong. And, it was only a few seasons ago that Canada was affected by a drought event that reduced our supply. And what we've been seeing is the strong demand for Canadian grains has also resulted in lower ending stocks. As we say in Canada, farmers are emptying out their bins. So the supply that we're looking forward to is going to be welcome to both keep the supply of grain going to the customers that want hard red, as well as being able to let farmers rebuild their stocks. So I think there's reason to continue to expect strong demand for Canadian wheat.
All right. I would want to first understand from the international perspective on how do you perceive India, its reforms going forward from your. So, Mr. Carlson, this one is to you. So, when you look at India and its numbers and an expectation that we could be importing and the kind of reforms, etc., that you see as an outsider, as an outside country, how are you perceiving that?
Well, the it's a challenging question. For Canada, the expectation is that India wouldn't be probably purchasing a lot from my country, and therefore the impact would likely be on some of the lower protein segments, as Mr. Petit mentioned, from the Black Sea. You know, the ability to access wheat from the international market is a very important thing for keeping global trade, and certainly having India be part of that is very important.
Mr. Petit, what's your sense, and how are you looking at all these restrictions, curbs that the Indian government seems to be putting on the sector?
Well, I would say, first of all, just bear in mind that the two world biggest producers of wheat are also importers of wheat. When we talk about China, we talk about EU, because sometimes the wheat sector, the grain sector, needs specific grains, and particularly for China, they're importing high protein content wheat because that's they cannot produce per se. So having a big country with a big volumes, but also importers, does it mean there is a problem? I think it's to use the efficiency of the global grain system. The second point I would say is if we look everywhere, it's not specific to India. When there is some political decisions about limiting the trade, for the traders, that means what is the duration of this position, and what will be the main criteria to move these trade barriers. And that's something I would say we try to really, as IGC, to bring forward transparency, because as soon as a market decision has not anymore taken on the background of the market, that means we can face higher volatilities on the global market, but also inside on the domestic market, because we know that when there is some trade restrictions, the first would say impacted stakeholders are the local farmers, because then suddenly they see some output which are not anymore available. So this is why here I would say really the most important food security. We know it is a very high topics on the table, and we could understand that countries had to make some decisions, but I think the best way is a predictability. Why this measure is put in place, what are the conditions to lift that measures. I think that's the most important to allow the traders indeed to operate, to make their business strategy.
Oh, well, absolutely. That's something that the Indian industry has been saying for a very long time. Long-term policies, more predictability, so that they don't have to firefight all the time. Sumit, let me get you in the conversation as well. What's your sense? Because all the major events that we've seen happen in India and abroad have talked about Indian markets and, of course, possibility of imports within India as well. What is it that the latest numbers that you're talking with, and how do you look at Indian demand and prices going forward?
Thank you, Manisha ji. It's a very important question because, as Somnath sir and Ajay ji has spoken about the supply number, because supply number is incomplete without putting a demand number into perspective. And if, let's say, government comes with the supply number of 112 million tons, we should ask them, what is your demand number? Because without that, we'll not be able to do, if our demand number is 80 million tons, everything is hunky-dory. We don't need to care about anything. So the point that we have to see today, the supply-demand imbalance in country is growing. Either demand is growing faster than supply, or supply is not able to catch up with the demand expectation. And that is where we are dipping into our ending stock. And price is reacting in such a way that we have to destruct demand at the local level. And because of that, who is suffering? I always ask this question. It's the last man on the street. The poorest person who finds it difficult to make his both ends meet, he suffers. And if as a country we have to grow at 8%, we have to make sure that there is ample food availability in this country. And that kind
But isn't enough wheat going to all of these households via the welfare programs?
So if you look at the wheat distribution program specifically, it's been reduced from 22 million tons to 18.5 million tons last year, which is a net drop of 3.5 million tons. But also you have to see where this drop has come into. This drop has come into Hindi heartland. And this is where the BJP as a ruling party has also suffered. Why? Because food is one thing which impacts everyone in this country. And one thing that we have to say, even though government is doing a lot through distribution programs, but those distribution programs are not the only thing. What's more important is to see how is the open market availability of food with everyone. And that can only be gauged if we have money in pocket and if we are ready to go and today we want to buy 50,000 tons, can we buy it? Answer is no. And if open market availability for 1.4 billion people is not there, that means we have a problem on hand and we have to address it now, not looking at a stock number, because what is government? Government is technically working for people. They have to work for people. And they have to make sure that food availability in the country remains liquid enough and it will only help country grow. And as you know, the RBI policy, they always come with a concern on the food inflation. And if we can take proactive steps, it's only going to make economy more vibrant. To add on this, as Sir has mentioned, what about the area of wheat? It's in total area in the country is constant, right? There is a pulses inflation, there is wheat inflation. Now next year, if farmer has to make a choice and chana is trading at 70 rupees and wheat is trading at, let's say, 24, 25, whatever that number is, even higher than MSP, what produce he will try and. So next year also, you are not going to see acreage increase in wheat in central India. So we don't have a problem or we don't have a situation at hand for only 6 months or 1 year. It's a perpetual situation that needs a timely addressal so that overall food availability of the country goes up.
Before I come with a follow-up question on that, Ashish, your sense on this one as well. So there are concerns, yes, not so much in international markets, but definitely for the Indian markets. And until the imports are not open, which we all seem to be believing will be opened at some point in time. But until then, with the kind of situation the country is, how are you looking at the numbers?
So I think, as Ajay sir very rightly pointed out, that the production number as per the private trade and the private analysts is around 103 to 105. But at the same time, I think Sumit bhai's point is very valid that we should look at the carryover numbers, which can be easily calculated. Mostly the industry doesn't carry over the stock. The government only carries over the stock, which are a reported number. And we can definitely have a better estimate of what actually the private trade is carrying, because today there is a system that the government has the data of all the traders in the market who are carrying the wheat. So I think looking at the carryover stock gives a very clear picture of the current situation. And like we say in the equity markets, that India is not a decoupled market. I think today, despite the fact that we are not importing much or exporting much, India is not a decoupled market. We should give it to the government that last year they controlled the situation beautifully, despite not opening up the imports. But we also need to be mindful that probably that was possible because in the background, the global markets were favorable. So if the government had to take that decision, the price parities were very good. There was a spread of $30 to $50 from different origins. And because this was playing out in the background, probably it helped the situation last year. This year, we started feeling the heat when we saw that in the end of May, when the projections for Russia, Ukraine, and some of these origins started coming out, where the production numbers were expected to go as low as 72 million tons as against 92 million tons for Russia. India started feeling the heat. The spreads came down to around $3 to $5 between Black Sea wheat coming into India versus the local wheat. And therefore, we saw a quick jump in the Indian prices that time. So even if we are not importing or exporting, India is completely connected market. And today, it is the need of the hour that the milling industry needs to very closely watch the S&Ds of all the important origins, like we understood about Canada, US, how they are progressing, how Black Sea region is progressing, and accordingly plan out the strategies of sourcing. And also, I think the government needs to bring in some predictability in the policies, because today it's the 70% capacity utilization of the balance period for the millers. We are not sure if government finds that they are not able to control the prices at this levels, probably they might bring it down to 50%, which again can be a big problem for the industry. So I think the government needs to look at the situation very on a broad level, and because if they don't want to make it a pattern that every year on 1st April they have to bring in, or June month they have to bring in a stock limit, they have to again make different policies for OMSs. I think they will have to break that pattern and improve the availability of the wheat by importing for, say, a couple of years, and then probably be in a comfortable situation.
So while we are importing so many things, Ashish, this one is to you, and a difficult one at that. Why is wheat import such a difficult thing for the government to do?
I think probably like in 2022, we were willing to feed the world, and we had given such bold statements to the market, to the world. I think it has made us difficult for us to go back now and start importing. Probably, I think that's the pressure probably the government is feeling, because the Atmanirbhar concept and the way we boast on how self-sufficient we are in terms of the food availability in the country. I think those are the pressures probably that the government is trying to avoid imports. And at the same time, I would say that unlike other years in which we imported, this year the rice stock situation is really good. In fact, they have to look at the possibility of how to bring down those stocks. So I think probably these two reasons is what government they are trying to hold back on the import part.
Mr. Asthana, this one is to you. As Ashish put it out, it's a pressure perhaps on the government on what they said, and going back to it, how much pressure are you feeling, and do you think government has more pressure vis-a-vis what industry has?
See, I think I'm sorry for joining this session late. Government has a very typical challenge, and so at one level, they need to sort of balance out the need of the producers in terms of, too much of flood of imports, puts that added pressure on the farmers in terms of how the price evolution happens. At another level, there's a consumer side. And if you look at the entire policy formation of the government, and especially in India, it's generally very pro-consumer. So inflation is a much larger issue, and there's an argument given that farmers are a consumer as well, and that's why this happens. But to come back to the point, I think and a broader issue the government will have to really sort of build a perspective on, and have more sort of practical viewpoint they need to build up. That for an economy which is growing at the pace where we are, and we're expecting that in 10 years' time, every 18 months, we'll add $1 trillion to our, to the GDP. I think the demand for food of different kinds is going to be very high. The second, and exactly India will go the China way. I think whether it's the 5-year lag, 8-year lag, 10-year lag, we'll be massive importers of food of all kinds. The challenge that we are facing right now is that, this recognition that there's a delta of that last 5 million tons or 2 million tons, that is the one which starts to, impact the commodity market. So it's really not the fundamental of some 100 million ton shortage or whatever, just 3 or 4 or 5 million tons, that 5% of the final delta, which impacts the commodity market prices in a huge way. And I think that a very balanced approach towards this side, whether you maintain strategic stocks outside the country, whether you do one-time imports of 10, 15 million tons and keep it as a buffer and sort of are able to rotate that, I think that is what the government will have to sort of recognize, that there should be adequate availability at reasonable prices. You cannot, and that's a policy side as well, that they need to follow, so that industry wants predictability. That's it.
Mr. Asthana, would you say that the government listens to the stakeholders, all of you?
They don't. And I'll be honest about it.
I have another one. Mr. Asthana, a lot of people, representations, associations, agencies, corporates, people who have access to ministries also go in and talk so many things. Do you think it creates confusion in that sense?
So, heck of a lot. And I'll give you a small story. There was a meeting long back with the World Bank president with just 5, 6 of us, and there was a planning commission secretary sitting there. And I exactly made this point that our policy formation is not made on either data or it's not linked to the facts or the objectivity of it. You show the face and the policy gets formed. And she agreed to that. She said, you know, there's that challenge is there with the government, that, you know, our think tanks, our associations and otherwise, I think they need to up their game, because we are also very ad hoc in the way we go about telling the government. We keep shifting our stand. It's not based on very objective assessment at the ground level. So I think both sides, unlike the US where the policy is so much dependent on the think tanks which feed into the policy formation, in India we don't do a great job. So government is continuously confused with what exactly is being said by the industry, because there are 5 different voices going. It is very anecdotal. It is just highly opinionated, and whoever has a better voice will go through. And so this is a problem with the policy side. So really government doesn't care.
This is a wakening call that everybody works on this together and goes there. I also want to come to each one of you. Since we're talking so many numbers here, let me go to my panel and then perhaps open it to you as well. Mr. Asthana, what is your sense on what is the wheat crop this time around?
So I think, you know, various numbers have been said. I was listening to Somnath and others, so I would say that whatever be the wheat crop, my issue is that, so I mean, I will just purely speculate, 108 million tons, 110 million tons, but I would only say that, you know, we should be watchful that any marginal impact on the, you know, on the crop size eventually is going to have a huge impact. The government needs to prepare itself that up to 4 to 5 million tons of imports, they should be prepared for. And I feel that we are absolutely sitting at such a tight level of our buffer stock. Anything marginally going wrong, even in supply chain also, I think will have a significant impact on the wheat markets domestically. And I think right now is a good time that the global markets are supportive. There's a good differential of 4,000 or 5,000 rupees, or, you know, which can sort of, India can import freely, especially in the southern ports. I think we should go for it.
Oh, absolutely. If imports has to happen, should happen now, because as you head close to Rabi crop, I think that would be a very wrong signal to do that. 108 million tons?
Yes.
I just need a number.
So 104 to 105.
I would say it's about 1 or 2 million tons more than last year. Whatever was the number. Because
I know a number.
Yeah, so somewhere in between. I think we all are somewhere in between.
No, you're not. 108, 104.
Yeah, so I don't think, you know, this is like somebody predicting the Nifty on next Monday.
But you're making your calculations as per these numbers.
Yeah, so but these are all again subject to things. So, but as I said it again, you know, it's somewhere between 104 and 110, or you know, you can pick any number of your choice. You know, nobody has counted
I don't want to make choices here.
Manisha ji, I've given my number, but if I can be an astrologer for a minute.
All right.
Look at the tea leaves, how they are unfolding. So can we take cues from what the government of India has done recently? Last couple of days, the TRQ. Very interesting. Please take cues from this. Are rapeseed / mustard growers not farmers? They are. So the TRQ has been opened. TRQ has been opened for maize. It's been opened for even skim milk powder.
That was always open.
Yeah, so the 10,000 tons they've been put into that. Now, so here the elephant in the room clearly is inflation, and the government is clearly looking and they're worried, right? So that is one takeaway. Second is, if you look at what they did for China, again, brilliant signaling. So they signaled duty-free imports till 31st March next year, just at the time when Australia was sowing. And that has resulted in a bumper sowing of China over there. And that will come in by October and November. That's good policy. So I think somewhere, while yes, we had made some statements, and I don't know, I would probably not agree with the ego statement. I think the government is pragmatic, and when they are concerned about inflation, and I think necessary steps will be taken.
So, you know, if government had, I mean, this is what we keep hearing and keep talking about as well. If it was 112 million tons, government perhaps would have procured more. If government is coming out with stock limits and mandatory disclosures, then perhaps it is not 112. So clearly that number is slightly on the higher side, but the government is sticking on to those numbers. You said 105 again.
No, we were 98 last year. We are at 99 this year, but our demand number is 103. So there is a net deficit of 4 million tons.
Anybody who's less than 98 or more than 110 in this room? Pretty much within that range. All right. I'll move on to the next question then, and I want to talk about the demand growth as well. Mr. Goyal, India has been seeing increase in demand as we go ahead. We've seen that in numbers as well. I just want to take an understanding on how much has India seen in sense of demand growth for wheat on an annual basis.
So I would say that, as I mentioned yesterday as well, that the processed food sector, so there is lesser going into direct household consumption and more going into the industrial segment. So there's more packaged atta being sold, there are more biscuits being sold. Of course, every segment has its own different rate of growth. Like packaged atta seems to be growing much faster. Biscuit consumption or growth has slowed down pretty much. But there are new options and new snacking options and all these in the form of these QSRs and malls. So the organized demand definitely is moving at a decent pace.
Let me come to you, Mr. Asthana, now, and I'll move on to my next point in questioning here. I want to understand on what is the industry's outlook for until the Rabi crop, until the next harvest, that is. How are you guys prepared if import happens, doesn't happen, how much of it happens, if these curbs continue going forward as well until FY25, we've all talked about that. How you as an industry are prioritizing it, one, and what's your sense on the wheat prices going forward from here, two?
So we believe that the prices will continue to move up without a question. I think to what level, I think it's just a pure speculation, but it certainly looks very firm. And I think as an industry, the option of stocking has been taken away effectively. So really the dependency on the spot markets to sort of, to feed itself. So our only urge is that, on the policy side, that I think government has to work towards, bringing down the prices, support it. And I think give adequate availability to the industry. And the only option available today, I think either these curbs are removed, which looks unlikely right now in the way they're going about it. I think is that to allow the imports. And I think our preparation would be that we pretty much in the camp of allowing anywhere between 4 to 5 million tons, and I think the time is now. I think the sooner they do it, the better off the country will be. I think better off it will be for the controls, and I think that would be more than enough to really ward off any significant price spike that we'll see till Rabi.
So you're saying the only way out of this is imports?
I would strongly, I think strategically for the nation, I think both in terms of, if I can talk forex outflow or price-wise or otherwise, I think 4 or 5 million tons will not dampen anything for the farmers. It will have zero impact. And I think allowing the southern imports, southern sort of ports or eastern part of the country, I think they can be selective about that as well. I think it will really be helpful. I think especially from Russia and Ukraine, there's a good adequate availability. Prices are very supportive. India should go for that.
I also want to know, various states are actually moving on to way more remunerative crops going forward. And that's something that we've seen in Punjab itself, the heartland of it, where perhaps maize or mustard seems to be picking up quite well. Do you see that also as a concern going forward?
It's a huge issue. And I think we'll have to recognize, so our share of high-value agriculture is nearly almost touching 75% plus now. So the cereals are, so demand for the cereals were pretty flat actually. For both wheat and rice, it was pretty flat for last 7-8 years. But urbanization is the one which drives a big, which is very pro-wheat, as what Mr. Goyal was saying, that urbanization is a big driver of wheat products in different forms and shapes being consumed by the consumers. So I think two parts. One is that, the farmers are making a lot more money on horticulture crops, on dairy crops, on, spices or maize or otherwise. I think the switchover possibility between chana and wheat in MP. So there are a lot of options the farmers have, and I think the farmers must have that freedom to really decide as to what they want to grow. And the policy impulses have to be such that if India wants to support wheat production, then we need to give that policy impulse, and rather than curbing on the stocking. And likewise, I think we should be free in terms of our imports and exports outlook towards these matters. And I think that pragmatism, that balance, and that even-handedness in dealing with the emerging dynamics of supply and demand, I think it's very critical time that the government needs to truly sit down, rather than make it to the point of ego that, we have had this production otherwise. I think we need a very pragmatic declaration of intended policy that this is how we're going to go about it. And I think especially in areas like edible oils or wheat or cereals, which are very germane and core to the food security of the nation, I think government has to have an approach really laid out. I think which is very transparent and straightforward, that if this happens, this is the trigger that will allow that. And I think if we make it more normative, more sort of principle oriented, I think we as an industry, consumers, farmers, and the policymakers, I think all of them will be much happy campers. I think if that, and that, unfortunately, that hasn't happened, but I think we need to truly think through as to how we're going to go about building that up.
We wish you all that happiness. But one final question. If there was one thing that you would want to tell the government, if it was to go ahead, implement that, what would that be?
No, I would say
Apart
that
from being imports, I mean, that is something.
No, I know. I'm just not talking just for the wheat part. I'll just take 30 seconds to answer that. I think very clearly, and that responsibility equally rests with the industry, perhaps a lot more. I think our ability to, there's very little trust the government has in terms of what the industry says. I think the associations, my sense is there's just hear them out because they need to hear, but probably that's it. There's little trust there. I think we need to be a lot more sort of stronger in what we talk, lot more research-based, lot more data-based, lot more with not our little interest on the side, but truly if we need to good policy sort of formation to happen in a much more organized way, I think we need to be much more diligent about what we talk, and I think much more serious so that we are taken seriously with that degree. And I think then I do believe that government does listen if the right voices are going to them, right communication is being done, and very balanced approach we need to do. But we need to have certainly a discussion, and I think people like you can influence that a lot.
You know,
If
Mr.
you can
Asthana,
put
I have to really share it with you, and this is a time when we were talking about millets a lot. Sari baatein millets pe ho rahi thi. Everybody wanted to talk about millets as well. So this one person calls me and he says, "Mujhe online lijiye, mujhe millets pe baat karni hai. Main is association se hu." I have never heard of associations, but then they are, cropping and mushrooming everywhere. And I asked him ki aapki association mein kitne log hain? So for the longest time, he wouldn't send it to me. And then I realized he's a one-person association, and he's made that representation to the government ki millets mein kya karna chahiye, and he wants to come on air and talk about that. So I get your point. It's too many people talking their interest, going, and it really is time if right, credible information can perhaps be taken ahead. But coming back to prices, and Ashish, this one is to you. What's your sense on prices? And if there is one top thing that you think government should be doing right now for the industry, for agriculture, or for wheat, since we're talking about that, what would it be?
So I think Asthana sir summed it up completely. I think
you can add to that.
Yeah. So I think we should look at how Turkey has developed. Turkey imports a lot of wheat, but at the same time they have developed their milling capacities. Today they have over 30 million tons of milling capacity, and they are the #1 exporter of the wheat flour. I think the need of the hour is that India should also liberalize imports and exports in a way that, say, for a biscuit flour, we need the cheapest wheat. We should be allowed to import that.
Ashish, let's talk what government will do. Liberalizing import-export is slightly away right now.
So I think
but right now, for this year, where the things are.
So for this year, I think completely this is the right time. The global markets are very supportive. We should definitely import. Today, the price indications from a Black Sea region is around $270, which is even at 10%, has a good parity for the southern markets. So I think this is the right time to import and definitely buffer up the private stock. Yeah.
So, it's like watching a horror movie. Agle scene mein kya hoga? Agle scene mein kya hoga? And so we are always waiting and, in anticipation.
And you're the hero of that movie,
no, not that way. But, we are always playing this guess game. I think it is best that the government it should ideally in the month of February, March declare the annual policy wherein that this is our target to import, this is our MSP, this is the way we see the year go by, and then just leave it to it, and whatever the market forces wish to do within that ambit is good. To keep everyone guessing, is the
but
problem.
you've also called government a lot of times proactive. Government is listening to us. They are proactive.
No, I see, of course, we need the government, and the government has its own priorities. And industry has a role to play, traders, farmers, everybody has a role to play. And everybody's trying to play the role within the law. And it's for the government to have a good enabling law so that everybody is able to survive and thrive. That is the whole intention.
All right. Let me remind you all, because 3 years ago, almost everybody was buying wheat. Everybody's uncles and nephews were buying wheat because wheat was the trade to be in until the government really got into it, and this is where it's gotten you now. Your top sense, what is the top conversation that ITC has right now when it comes to wheat? When you wake up in the morning, call your people in your boardroom, what is that first conversation?
Ma'am, okay, that's a little bit of a secret, but that apart, it's usually, okay, no secret. It's usually me getting a jhad because, you know, my budgets are being
And then you passing it on to
superseded.
your juniors?
But if I could give one request to the government, for a country our size, for the agri-economy our size, the lifeblood is transparent price discovery mechanism. And ma'am, as a consumer, as a person who doesn't buy agri-commodities to trade, but to use it, what mechanism do I have to hedge? I can't do anything about sugar. I can't do anything about wheat. I mean, you know, our hands and legs are tied. And on the other hand, we are working on 5 rupee, 10 rupee, 20 rupee price points. You can't keep changing grammage or increasing, no? तो आप उसको 12 रुपए 17 पैसा नहीं कर सकते पैकेट को. So, you know, you're stuck there. So, if the farmer, if the consumer, if the user, everyone can see transparent price discovery like you can see on the Bursa Malaysia Index. I mean, won't that be a great thing for India? And for a strong, vibrant agri-economy, I think that's very important.
So, you know, as Mr. Asthana made a point, कि ठीक है जो government कर रही है वो कर रही है, but as industry, what are you guys doing then?
Well, you know, as an industry, we represent, but yes, I will admit that often, many of them, and I'm a part of associations of sugar and edible oils, etc., and often some of the associations are very effective, but some aren't. So I think we must do this more concertedly, and individually, I do happen to know that companies go represent, they have their inroads into North Block. So that is there, but I think probably we need to look at, like for instance, the wheat industry, I would agree, one of the things, I mean, imports, exports, वगैरह तो चलता रहेगा, but fortification, I do believe, is an important thing which the industry needs to represent and come together on. So that's my view.
So, again, on prices, what's your sense? Because all of us seem to be believing that prices from here on will go higher.
Yes, if you do nothing, if you don't allow any imports, then prices will continue to
So,
go
you know, tell me, government is doing everything that it's doing, and you guys are reacting to it. What is it that you are doing on a fire footing, proactively, talking to the government, talking to stakeholders, and ensuring that your point is put forth?
Yeah, I think even as recently as yesterday, some of our colleagues were at North Block. They're sitting here in this room. So they've made their case, they've pitched. They've told all the pitfalls ahead of us. The bureaucrats are aware of the scenario. And I'm quite hopeful that they will take requisite measures to bring it down. As far as prices are concerned, it's like this. If we talk in dollar parity, I think we were talking about Tuticorin at 285. Roughly landed in my warehouse in Tamil Nadu. That will work out to what, about 28 odd, or 28.50. If I were to take wheat from UP, although they are not allowing rake loading right now, or if I take it from MP, it'll land me at about 29.25 today. So there is just that razor thin margin which is available today. If we announce import policy, perhaps that 285 will go to 300. I don't know. Quite likely to happen. But you know what? I think if I just extrapolate 8-9% increase in next year's MSP, so that 22.75 then goes to say around 24.50. Well, then it makes sense. Yeah. So I think it's a no-brainer now that 3 to 5 million tons, and मेरे हिसाब से 5 million से ज़्यादा, I think we don't even have the infrastructure capability to also import. तो जो है वो जल्दी से जल्द हमें कर लेना चाहिए. That's my view.
You know, looking at your work pressures, Mr. Chatterjee, if your child had to come to wheat or edible oil or sugar business, what would you advise?
पैदा ही नहीं किया. The entire life was so full of tension. So I don't have that problem. But yes, I see a lot of people now coming into this line of supply chain and stuff like that. It's exciting. When in my earlier days, I finished 33 years in the industry. Earlier days, एक commodity में पूरे साल में अगर 5% की volatility होगी ना, so people हाय तौबा करते थे, right? Today, 5% in some commodities are par for the course in one trading session. So yeah, we are living in very, very interesting times. And we shall continue to do that, I guess.
Yes, exciting times. If that is what you were looking at, you're living in them.
So, Manisha ji, I will go back to Ajay ji. You mentioned him as a hero in a horror movie. You know,
Who's the villain here?
actually, hero suffers for the 90% of the time in a horror movie. Okay, it's only the last 5% where he makes his impact, and that's the role of the processors today in the market. And coming to your point on the wheat and the government, role of government. Look, all the policies today are structured as a supply shortage policies. El Nino years, we need to do something to bring supplies to cool off the prices. We as a country, we as government, who is representing us, I'm saying, need to think as demand-driven policies. Where when a country of 1.4 billion people is growing, and it is going to become a $5 trillion economy, and for the $7 trillion economy by 2047, we want to become a $25 trillion economy. So considering all these factors, food demand is not going to stay here. We have to have a realization we'll not be self-sufficient. And if we are not going to stay self-sufficient, what China has done 15 years back, they have their supply chain across the world to take care of their food requirement for next 50 years. What have we done? We have asked industry to make representation. So the point that we have to address as government is we need to be forward-looking. We don't need to disassociate food from policy making that it's 100 million farmers. We are doing biggest disservice to the farmer of the country by not allowing his rake to be loaded from UP to South. Who is suffering? It is farmer, it's the 1.4 billion consumers of the country who is suffering. So overall, the policy making has to go hand in hand. It has to change. Outlook has to change from supply shortage to demand-driven aspect. And that is where all of us within industry also need to change that outlook. Why should we talk import as a holy cow? That, whether import will happen or it should not happen. It should be a function of market. And we have to reach that stage where policy becomes a function of market and it is responsive to the requirement.
Oh, absolutely. We are an industry where sugar guys are craving that 1 million ton perhaps should be exported, and this is wheat industry, which is hoping at least 4 to 5 million tons can be imported here. Mr. Petit, I'll come to you for your final comments as well. You heard us, and yes, we are a worried lot here, but when you look at wheat consumption going forward and wheat prices going forward as well, from India's perspective, are you taking any view there?
Yes, very fascinating discussion indeed. And we had just 1 month ago a conference also in London, and we had a specific discussion about South Asia. And what we see definitively, the wheat consumption, but also the grains, will continue to increase in South Asia, particularly, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So that's really the two areas where the consumption will continue to grow, and we have to pay special attention in these two regions. For India, we know that we cannot expect more wheat area in production in the near future. What does it mean to work on yield productivity? That's something really to look closely in the near future for the Indian grain industry, is how to improve its productivity. And here I would like to bring digitization. There is new tool now where you can really bring new knowledge to farmers to improve their practices and to have a better efficiency per hectare, which may alleviate some pressure on the market. And the second point is also improving the market transparency. As life is here in Canada, they are doing all of the forecast harvest remotely. So they can, and they do it on a weekly basis, just few weeks before the harvest, which bring also some transparency and neutral information for the government to make their own decision, for example. So that's, I think, something also to look at is how digitization can be a new tool, which is spreading. That's clear, but in order also to be useful for the policy-making decision and to have more quickly and accurate figures to make that decision. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. So long-term policies is something that we're looking for. At this point in time, of course, Higher prices, more demand, and concerns is what the industry is dealing with. With that, I think we have time for a couple of questions, feedback, if a comment that you would want to make.
Check. 1, 2, 3.
Anything on wheat products?
Yes.
Yes,
1,
please.
2, 3. We'll take 3 questions and short
Yes.
ones.
Yes.
From 2018-19, we're almost hovering around 99 plus. And today we are talking of 101, 102, 105. So the population having grown up, the temperatures increasing. 1 degree temperature, they say, brings down the crop to a lesser level. And yesterday there was a presentation by Dr. Shekhar, who said that if we deploy some other thing, AI, like AI, etc., we can probably go up the production. So we have to think on long term. The short term, yes, whatever the panelists are suggesting to import 5 million tons or 6 million tons is all right. But as a country, or as an association of the wheat users, the flour milling industry has also to do some brainstorming to find out as to how the production can go up and what are the measures that we have to take. So it has to be integration, forward or backward. So both way the integration has to take place, and I suggest that the milling industry should come forward and do some backward integration also.
Oh, yes, as they say, that stock limits will not increase production or productivity. So there are long-term measures that we will perhaps have to take. Yes.
So no, not working.
This year, FCI procurement figures in UP, if we see it's a 10% than the target. Again, the MSP, the UP farmers, they are not ready to give their wheat on MSP. That means they need more price. And pressure from the consumer sides to reduce the price, pressure from the South Indian miller side to import the wheat. What I can see near future, the farmers are pressured and there are a chance that they can shift from the wheat. And the corn, mind it, is coming very big way with the ethanol plants. So we should be careful on the farmer sides so that price and supply should be maintained at the mid-level. Because the corn is coming in very big way and it's a big cash crop. We can take inferences from the sugarcane in the eastern side. Eastern UP side where the sugarcane, once upon a time it was very high, but now it is on the lower side. So this is my input.
Sure. Mr. Goyal, this one is to you. So, when it comes to wheat as a crop or wheat as an industry, wheat as a product, who do you think is making money right now?
So I think around
Farmer, industry.
Yeah, so everybody has their turn to make money, I guess. So because volatility in the price offers that arbitrage to everybody once in a way. But that has become so high, as Somnaji was saying, 5% rise in price or movement in price a few years ago was a big thing, was making like national headlines. And now we have a 5-7% in a week, and it really doesn't, it's part of the movement. So I guess the uncertainty is the opportunity for people who want to make money, but we are in a simple commodity processing business, and for us, this commodity volatility is really not good. And so it is, we are in times where more and more people want to secure themselves. So previously, mills were maintaining 15-day stocks. They are now currently maintaining 60, 90, or even higher stocks. Previously, my buyers were buying either in spot or on a monthly rate contract or a weekly rate contract. They are looking at quarterly, half-yearly, and annual hedges. So everybody is trying to secure himself because nobody is smart enough, to be a speculator and keep making money. You have to have a steady flow. So everybody who's tried to speculate, makes it once in a way, but very often he ends up losing.
All right. I think we have time enough just to take one more question. Yes, please. We can't hear you. Can we please pass the mic there?
Hello, good morning. It's a question to Petit. Please brief us about the Australian wheat crop size and viability of import to India. Can you do that? It's a question to International
Mr.
Grains
Petit, hi,
Council.
can you hear us?
No, International Grains Council.
Yep. Just sorry, the harvest from which country?
Australia.
Australia, yes. So what we are expecting for Australia, you know, they're in a seeding period of time. So that means we are just looking for the time being on Australia. So we are looking for 24, 25, 30 billion tons of wheat, so plus 16%. So definitively positive expectation. But you know that in South Hemisphere, moving from La Nina to El Nino, we might have also some surprise. So this is the current expectation with average yield, and we will need to continue to monitor closely the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Manisha ji. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have more questions.
We can take one more
But
question.
we'll take a final one, and after that, when they come down, you can do a one-to-one. Sir.
हाँ जी, मैं यूपी से राम से सिंगल बोल रहा हूँ जी। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि देश में गेहूं की पर्याप्त है, उसके बाद भी मंगवाने की क्यों बात हो रही है? ये नहीं मंगवाना चाहिए क्योंकि इसमें फार्मर का भी नुकसान है और यहाँ की नॉर्थ की जो पैदावार करने वाले हैं वो उसमें नुकसान में जाएंगे और यहाँ की मिलें बंद हो जाएगी। मेरे हिसाब से नहीं मंगवाना चाहिए। बाकी आप
ब्रीफ कमेंट। तो ऐसा है, जैसे बोलते हैं आपकी क्षेत्र में जो है गेहूं पर्याप्त है, आप जरा एक गाड़ी लेके निकलिए और थोड़ा 500, 800, 1000, 2000 किलोमीटर और जगह पे जाइए। तो ऐसा है क्योंकि यूपी ने एफसीआई को नहीं दिया, वहाँ पे वो केवल आपका ही प्रांत है जहाँ पर गेहूं सरप्लस है और साल भर आपको मिलता रहेगा। जहाँ तक हम वेस्टर्न जोन में है, गुजरात में क्रॉप शॉर्ट था, महाराष्ट्र में क्रॉप शॉर्ट था और बोनस देके जो है गवर्नमेंट ने हरियाणा में और एमपी में थोड़ा बहुत माल खींच लिया। तो एक्चुअली जो है आज स्पॉट में खरीदने जाओ तो जल्दी से आसानी से माल मिलता नहीं है। ये दिक्कत कई लोगों को महसूस होती है।
आपके पास गेहूं है? गेहूं दे दिया आपने सरकार को? हाँ, आपके पास पड़ा है?
सभी आईटीसी में पड़ा हुआ है। काफी हमारे यहाँ जो शाहजहांपुर में है कई लाखों कुंटल है और जितना चाहेगा उतना मिल जाएगी।
पर 9 महीने निकालने, याद रखिएगा।
चाहिए मिल जाएगा।
9 महीने निकालने और
मिल जाएगा जी।
सब आपके पास आ रहे हैं जी। आपके पास
आते हैं शाहजहांपुर से हर रोज 3 रैक के जा रही है जी। हर रोज 3 रैक के हमारे यहाँ से लोड होता है। नहीं, हिंदुस्तान में नहीं, सब बेंगलोर में जा रही है।
बहुत धन्यवाद. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. But don't go away. We would like to acknowledge all our speakers. Even you gentlemen who are online, stay there. We'll give you symbolically a token of our appreciation, and you will accept it symbolically. Thank you. But first, may I request Mr. Sumit Asthana to kindly come forward and hand over the mementos first to Manisha Gupta ji, Group Commodity Editor, CNBC TV 18, for conducting this session so brilliantly with the questions which sometimes people are not too comfortable to answer, but, well, they still do it. Thank you, Manisha ji. She has a flight. She has to go to Goa. She's traveling several cities up and down. But you know what? Let me warn you. If you're going by T1, Delhi Airport, it is closed. So find another airport. May I invite Mr. Petit is not there now, but Mr. Petit, in case you can hear us, we honor your presence here and thank you very much. Yeah, big round of applause. Executive Vice President, Head of Procurement, Logistics, ITC Limited, Foods Division, Mr. Somnath Chatterjee. Wonderful contribution by you to the forum, Somnath ji, as usual. Thank you. Thank you, sir. CEO, Asia Business, McDonald Pells, Global Commodities, Mr. Sumit Gupta. Every time I say the name McDonald's, my mouth starts watering. Sumit ji, next time please carry a few burgers for us. Mr. Leif Carlson online, if you are still there, I thank you very much on behalf of the forum. Give him a big round of applause. To Mr. Ajay Goyal, Chairman, Wheat Products Promotion Society, WPPS. Well deserved. You worked day and night very hard for this event. To Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi, General Manager of Rice and Grain Business, Olam Agri India Private Limited. Thank you. And I think all of you come in the front and we'll honor Sumit ji. I think Sumit ji, they must be having a trophy for him because you were not there in the morning session. Sanjeev ji, I'm sorry. So because you know, you have? Okay, so may I invite all of you for a group picture here? Wonderful. Come on, give your best smile, show your mementos, send it to your spouses, your family on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Ajayji, we have our next session at 12, so that means they have a tea break? Tea break, 12 baje, immediately we will start. Thank you very much. Now, if anybody is having rooms in this hotel, and if your departure is today, I request you bring your bags down, check out, give the key. Otherwise, you may be charged. Okay, so if you are staying in this hotel, and if your checkout is supposed to be today, I request you to kindly check out. Thank you very much.